The morning fog still clung to the outer walls of Fort Resolute, one of the most classified military installations on U.S. soil. Armed towers tracked movement automatically, drones circled silently above, and biometric scanners blinked at every checkpoint like watchful eyes that never slept. It was a place where even silence felt regulated. A black armored SUV slowed as it approached the main gate. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, but not ordinary calm. It was the kind of calm that came from someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Seated in the back was a woman in a simple, unmarked uniform, dark tactical pants, a fitted navy jacket, and combat boots that had clearly seen real field operations. Her hair was tied into a tight, high ponytail, no stray strands, no distractions. Her posture was straight, controlled, and steady. She wasn't nervous, not even slightly. Her name was Captain Alara Vance. But at Fort Resolute, no one would recognize that name yet. Not because she wasn't important, but because her existence wasn't supposed to be publicly acknowledged. In her hand rested something unusual, something that didn't belong in any standard military catalog. A matte black clearance card. No name printed on it, no rank visible, no barcode, no hologram strip. Just a faint metallic emblem embedded deep within the surface, only visible when light struck it at a precise angle, like it was hiding from the world on purpose. The SUV came to a stop at the checkpoint. A loud mechanical clunk echoed as the barrier locked into place. Two armed guards stepped forward immediately. Their rifles were lowered but ready, their eyes alert and suspicious. The first guard leaned slightly toward the window. Identification and authorization. All passengers must comply. The driver glanced at Alara. She didn't move right away. Not because she was unsure, but because she was observing, studying. The gate, the guards, the timing, the system response delay. Then, without a word, she opened the door and stepped out. The sound of her boots hitting the pavement was sharp in the quiet morning air. The guards exchanged a brief look. Something about her didn't match their expectations. No insignia, no visible rank, no escort detail. Just presence. Controlled, deliberate presence. The second guard stepped closer. "Ma'am, state your designation." Alara reached into her jacket and pulled out the black card. She held it out. Not dramatically. Not defensively. Just simply. The first guard took it between two fingers, already frowning. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked, tilting it slightly. "Some kind of contractor ID." The second guard leaned in and let out a short laugh. "Looks like something from a luxury membership club." The first guard smirked. "We don't process novelty cards here, ma'am." Alara didn't respond. That silence made the air feel heavier. The first guard moved toward the scanner terminal mounted beside the gate. It was a reinforced military-grade verification unit, capable of reading biometric, genetic, and encrypted clearance data. He swiped the black card once. The machine blinked. No result. He swiped again. Still nothing. A small red indicator flashed. "Invalid credentials," the system announced in a flat synthetic tone. The second guard crossed his arms. "Yeah, I think that settles it." The first guard shook his head slowly. "This is either fake or corrupted data." He looked at Alara again. "You're going to have to leave the perimeter, ma'am. Misuse of military checkpoints is a serious offense." A few nearby soldiers began to glance over now, sensing something unusual unfolding. Alara finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but carried an edge of quiet authority. "Return the card." The first guard raised an eyebrow. "Or what?" That single question shifted the atmosphere slightly. Not enough for most people to notice, but enough for trained soldiers to feel it instinctively. A pause before conflict. Alara's gaze stayed steady. You don't want to continue this. A short, humorless laugh escaped the second guard. We hear that a lot. The first guard turned the black card in his hand again. Listen, lady, you can't just walk into Fort Resolute with a prop and expect access. This isn't a movie. Alara didn't react to the insult. Instead, her eyes briefly scanned the scanner terminal. Then the gate structure. Then the overhead surveillance nodes. She wasn't reacting emotionally. She was assessing system architecture. That alone should have been enough to make them uneasy. The first guard sighed and lifted his radio. I'm calling this in, probably a contractor dispute or... Before he could finish, the black card emitted a faint pulse. Not visible at first, but noticeable in how the scanner screen flickered. A soft humming sound began to rise from the terminal. The second guard frowned. Did you see that? The first guard looked down at the card. And for the first time, his expression changed slightly. The card was no longer inert. A thin red line of light traveled across its surface like a heartbeat. The scanner suddenly rebooted. All at once, the terminal screen went black. Then restarted. Faster than before. And this time, the system spoke differently. Unknown device DATSCTD. The guard stiffened. That's not normal, the second guard said quietly. Alara extended her hand slightly. I told you, she said softly, return it. The first guard hesitated. Then the entire checkpoint alarm system emitted a low-frequency tone. Not loud, but deep enough to vibrate through the ground. A warning signal. From inside the base, the scanner screen flickered again. This time, a hidden protocol layer began to unlock itself, something buried beneath standard military access levels. The first guard slowly looked at the screen. What is happening right now? He whispered. Alara's eyes remained steady. Because she already knew. Some systems were not meant to stay asleep forever. And Fort Resolute had just started waking one up. The low hum from the checkpoint scanner deepened into something more unsettling, like a machine slowly remembering a language it had been forced to forget. The guard stood frozen, watching the terminal as if it had suddenly stopped belonging to their world. The first guard tightened his grip on the black card. Okay, this is getting out of hand. The second guard leaned closer to the screen. It's just a glitch. Old systems do this sometimes. Reboot it and... A sharp beep cut through his sentence. The screen flashed once. Then everything changed. Security Layer 1 override initiated. A cold silence fell over the gate. Even the distant drone noise above seemed quieter now. The first guard frowned. Security Layer, what does that even mean? Alara Vance stood perfectly still. Her eyes didn't move to the screen immediately. Instead, she looked at the guards. Not in anger, not in frustration, but in a way that felt like she was already a few steps ahead of them, like she had seen this moment before. The second guard tapped the terminal again. This system is outdated. There's no way it's... Suddenly, the scanner emitted a bright red pulse. The entire gate structure locked with a heavy mechanical clang. The barrier behind them dropped automatically. Emergency protocol engaged. The first guard stepped back instinctively. Why is the gate closing? The terminal voice responded again, but this time it was different. Less artificial. More aware. Anomaly DATSCTD. A pause. Then, matching clearance signature. The second guard shook his head quickly. No, 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 there's nothing to match, she doesn't even have. The system interrupted him. Signature found. The screen flickered violently. Lines of encrypted data began to scroll across faster than any human could read. Then, a name appeared. The guards leaned in instinctively. At first, it looked incomplete. Corrupted. Then it resolved itself. Captain ELARAVANCE. The first guard blinked. Wait, Captain. The second guard frowned deeply. That's impossible. We don't have anyone by that name assigned to Fort Resolute. The system didn't stop there. It continued as if correcting them. Clearance level, unlisted. Status, active, classified beyond top secret. Chain of command, non-existent within standard military DATABASES. The air between the guards suddenly felt heavier. The first guard looked down at the black card again. It didn't look like a joke anymore. It looked like a mistake. A very dangerous mistake. Ilara finally spoke again. Put it down. Her voice was calm, but it carried a subtle shift now. Not louder. Not harsher. Just final. The first guard hesitated, then slowly placed the card back into her hand. The moment her fingers closed around it, the scanner emitted a deep tone that vibrated through the ground. Authority transfer acknowledged. The second guard took a step back. Authority transfer, what does that even mean? The first guard looked at Ilara directly now. For the first time, there was no mockery in his expression. Only uncertainty. Ma'am, who exactly are you? Before she could answer, the terminal screen abruptly went dark. For half a second, everything stopped. No sound. No movement. Even the wind outside the gate seemed to hesitate. Then, a new interface appeared. Unlike the previous system screen, this one was not part of the base's standard network. It was deeper, older, hidden. Project Black Veil, connection established. The second guard stepped back sharply. No way, that program was decommissioned years ago. The first guard turned his head slightly. What program? But the second guard didn't answer, because the screen kept updating. Subject confirmed. ACCSSING, ARCHIVED military records. Ilara's expression didn't change, but something in the atmosphere did. A shift. Like a sealed door had just been unlocked somewhere far below the surface. The system continued. Level 0, authorization DATACTED. The first guard blinked, level 0. The second guard whispered, almost to himself, that doesn't exist. Nothing in the military goes above level 5 publicly. The terminal paused, then displayed a final line. All local command structures are now subject to Captain ELARAVANCE. Silence hit the checkpoint like a physical force. A soldier behind them dropped his radio. It hit the ground with a sharp crack. No one moved to pick it up. The first guard slowly turned toward Ilara. His voice lowered, "We didn't know." Ilara didn't respond immediately. She simply looked at the gate, then the soldiers, then the system terminal, as if confirming something. Then she said quietly, "You were never supposed to know." The second guard swallowed hard. Then why is this system reacting like you're above everything? For the first time, Ilara's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, but in recognition. Because somewhere deep inside Fort Resolute, something had just started waking up fully. And it was no longer just a scanner glitch. It was a protocol. One that should have remained buried forever. The terminal flickered one last time, and a final message appeared. Initiating full base lockdown. Alarms across Fort Resolute suddenly began to rise. Not just at the gate. Everywhere. The moment the words, "initiating full base lockdown," appeared on the terminal, Fort Resolute changed. Not gradually. Instantly. A deep metallic thunk echoed through the entire gate system as reinforced barriers slid into place. Red emergency lights ignited along the perimeter walls, painting everything in a warning glow. The guards of the checkpoint stepped back instinctively. "What just triggered that?" the second guard shouted. The first guard grabbed his radio. "Control, we've got an unauthorized system override at Gate 3, requesting immediate confirmation." "Static." Only static answered. The radio crackled, then died completely. He looked at it in disbelief. No signal. Elara Vance stood at the center of it all, completely unaffected by the chaos unfolding around her. The black card in her hand pulsed faintly again, like it was still alive. The system terminal flickered violently. Base network COMPROMICD. Secondary protocol engaged. The second guard turned toward Elara, his voice no longer confident. "This is your doing, isn't it?" Elara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked past the gate, toward the interior of Fort Resolute, as if she could see deeper than walls. "Not my doing," she said quietly. "Your system recognized what it buried." That line didn't make sense to them. But it didn't need to. Because the base itself was reacting, like something had been remembered. Far inside Fort Resolute, alarms began to echo through corridors. Soldiers rushed into positions, boots striking steel floors in synchronized panic. "Lockdown across all sectors," a voice shouted over the internal comms. "Repeat, this is not a drill." Doors slammed shut automatically. Security shutters dropped over hallways. Weapon racks unlocked. The entire base transitioned from routine military order to full containment protocol. And no one understood why. In the central command hub, officers stared at cascading error reports flooding every screen. "Sir, we've lost access to outer gate control. Internal systems are rerouting themselves. Firewall is bypassed. Something is rewriting the network from inside." A senior commander slammed his hand on the table. "Who authorized this lockdown?" No one answered. Because no authorization code existed in their system for what was happening. Back at Gate 3, the second guard took a step forward again. "This is insane," he muttered. "We scanned your card, it's just a piece of metal. How is it shutting down the entire base?" Elara finally turned her eyes to him. And this time, there was something different in her expression. Not anger, not superiority, but certainty. "It's not shutting down the base," she said. A pause. "It's waking it up." Before either guard could respond, the terminal emitted a deep tone, then displayed a new message. "Archival memory layer ACCSSING." The first guard stepped closer despite himself. "Archival memory layer." The second guard shook his head. "I've never heard of that in the system." Elara exhaled slowly, like she was accepting something unavoidable. "You wouldn't," she said. The screen shifted again. Suddenly, a classified designation appeared. Project Black Veil, Active Core Link DETCTED. The second guard froze. Black Veil, that program was erased from military records. The first guard looked at him sharply. "What is Black Veil?" The second guard hesitated, then spoke quietly. "It was supposed to be a defense protocol, created for command-level containment response, but it was shut down years ago after internal incidents." Elara's voice cut in softly. "It wasn't shut down." Both guards looked at her. "It was sealed," she continued, "because it worked too well." A low vibration passed through the ground beneath them. Not from machinery. From something deeper, inside the base structure. The terminal suddenly flashed red. "Core entity link established." The first guard stepped back again. "Core entity, what does that even mean?" Ilara looked at the screen now, and for the first time, her voice carried something heavier. Something inside this base doesn't belong to your chain of command anymore. A loud clang echoed from deeper within Fort Resolute. Then another. Then another. As if massive doors were unlocking one by one. The second guard raised his weapon slightly without realizing it. We should stop this, right now. But Ilara didn't move. Because she knew stopping it wasn't possible anymore. The system had already made its decision. Suddenly, every screen across the gate flickered simultaneously, and a single line appeared everywhere. "Welcome back, Captain ELARAVANCE." The first guard's face went pale. "Welcome back." He turned slowly toward her. "You've been here before." Ilara didn't deny it. That silence confirmed more than words ever could. Inside Fort Resolute, deeper alarms triggered again, but this time they were different. Not emergency warnings. Recognition protocols. As if the base itself had identified something long forgotten. The second guard lowered his weapon slightly. "What did you do to this place?" Ilara's eyes shifted toward the interior of the base again. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. "I just came back to finish what was never completed." The terminal screen suddenly went black. A second later, a final message appeared in bold white text. "Sector 0, UNLOCKING." The lights across Fort Resolute dimmed for half a second. Then, everything inside the base went silent. Not broken silent. Controlled silent. Like something had taken over the sound itself. And somewhere deep underground, a door that had not been opened in years finally began to move. The silence inside Fort Resolute wasn't normal silence anymore. It was controlled. Engineered. Even the emergency alarms that had been screaming moments ago had stopped mid-cycle, as if the base itself had been forcibly muted by something deeper than its own command system. At Gate 3, the guards stood frozen, watching the darkness spread through the internal network displays. The first guard's voice finally broke. This isn't a lockdown protocol. This is something else." The second guard swallowed hard. "We don't have authority over this level of shutdown." Ilara Vance stood still, her black card now resting in her palm like a dormant key. Then the ground trembled. Not violently, but precisely. A structured vibration, moving through the base like a pulse. From deep underground, the terminal screen at the gate suddenly reactivated. "Sector 0 access granted." The first guard stepped back instantly. "Sector 0, that's not in any operational map." The second guard looked at him sharply, "Because it doesn't exist on any map." Ilara finally turned her gaze toward the interior gate. For the first time, something like anticipation flickered in her expression. "It exists," she said quietly, "just not for people who are supposed to sleep at night." A distant mechanical roar echoed through the base. Then another. Then several heavy containment locks releasing in sequence. Clang, clang, clang. Each sound felt like a buried system, unlocking layer by layer. Across Fort Resolute, soldiers were no longer just reacting, they were confused. "Sector 0 is active." That zone was sealed years ago. We were ordered never to access it under any condition. In the central command hub, officers crowded around the main console. A senior commander slammed his fist on the table. "Who authorized Sector 0 activation?" No answer came. Because no one alive had that authority. Every screen in the command center suddenly shifted. And the same name appeared again. Captain ELARAVANCE. A junior officer stepped back. "Sir, that name is propagating through every system layer. It's overriding admin permissions." The commander's face tightened. Trace the source. The technician shook his head. We can't. The system isn't receiving a command, it's receiving a presence. Meanwhile, back at Gate 3, the second guard looked at Alara differently now. Not like a suspect, not like an intruder, but like something he couldn't classify anymore. You're not just a captain, he said slowly. Alara didn't respond immediately. The ground trembled again. This time stronger. A deep vault door somewhere beneath Fort Resolute began to unlock fully. A sound echoed through the base like a massive mechanical breath being released after years of holding still. Alara finally spoke. I was never just a captain. The first guard frowned. Then what are you? Before she could answer, the black card in her hand suddenly activated again. A holographic interface projected into the air above it. Lines of classified data unfolded rapidly. Project Black Veil. Status SEALED. Authority class, beyond national command structure. The second guard stepped closer despite himself. That program, it's real. Alara's eyes stayed on the data. It was real, she corrected softly, before it was hidden. The hologram expanded further. And then, a final classification appeared. The guards saw it at the same time. And both went silent. Rank designation, Sector 0 Commander. The first guard shook his head. Sector 0 Commander, that's not a military rank, that's impossible, Alara finished for him. A faint, almost sad smile crossed her face. Most things in this base were designed to stay impossible. The entire gate structure suddenly unlocked. Not by human command. By system authority. The massive barriers separating Gate 3 from the inner base slowly lifted, with a grinding mechanical sound. Light from inside Fort Resolute spilled out. But it wasn't normal light. It was cold, sterile, like the glow of a system that had been asleep for too long. The second guard raised his weapon slightly again, instinctively reacting to the unknown. But his hand was shaking now. What happens if Sector 0 is fully opened? He asked. Alara stepped forward toward the gate and stopped just before crossing the threshold. Then the base stops pretending it was ever safe. A loud mechanical sequence echoed again from deep within. Clag, clag, clag. Final locks disengaging. Then, a massive underground door began to open, and a deep automated voice echoed through every speaker in Fort Resolute. Sector 0, Command Authority RESTORED. Every soldier inside the base stopped moving. Every system paused. Even the command center fell silent. Because now they understood something terrifying. This wasn't an intrusion. This was a return. At Gate 3, the first guard lowered his weapon slightly. His voice was quieter now. Ma'am, what is Sector 0? Alara looked ahead, into the opening base corridor. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she said, it's where all military decisions go when they're too dangerous to be remembered. A long silence followed. Then she stepped forward, across the threshold, and the moment her boots crossed into Fort Resolute's inner corridor, every light inside the entire base shifted from red emergency tone to a single steady white. Recognition mode. The system had accepted her completely. Behind her, the guards didn't move, because they couldn't decide anymore if they were witnessing a breach or the return of their highest authority. And deep underground, Sector 0 fully awakened for the first time in years.